Good evening, Colorado and the Rocky Mountain Mile High region. What is up? It is our Friday edition. We love this. Andrew Mason, Cecil, Lammey. Dude, we get to do orange and blue today and Denver sports tonight, and we get to talk about Raiders week. Mace, who's got it better than us?
The people who are enjoying their Saturday and listening to or watching this show because it's also the Saturday edition of Orange and Blue today. Yes. You're listening on radio. You're getting the preview of what's going to be out there digitally as our Saturday show, which is part of how Orange and Blue today is a 7-day-a-week program. For those of you who haven't been following digitally, Cecil, Lammey, and I talk Broncos every day of the week.
Every single day, man. And that's why if you're hearing us on the radio, you haven't checked us out on YouTube, please do that. And yeah, man, we're here to serve both audiences, Mace, because it is Raiders week. And one thing that you and I noted out there at Broncos Park, powered by Common Spirit, is the players seem to understand. The coaches understand, like, okay, even like Sean Payton, you know, like this is important to the fans. And I think we got that vibe that everybody knew that and felt that this week.
Yeah, for the most part, I would say. I think there was a little bit of downplaying. We'll actually play a clip from Garett Bolles that I posted on social media and did not seem to go over very well with fans. So we'll play that, and you can you can decide what you think of what Bolles had to say. Now, everyone's talking about this in the context of it's a division game. It's the first AFC West game of the year. The Broncos have not had a winning record in the AFC West since Super Bowl 50. And the fact that they haven't been to the playoffs since then, it's not a coincidence. The Broncos, in their history, by the way, Cease, the only time they've had a record that was 500 or worse and won the AFC West, it was back in 2011 when 500 won you the division.
Right.
And then they had a year, 1983, 41 years ago, where they were 3-5 in the division and snuck into the playoffs at 9-7 before getting drummed by Seattle. Point being, Sean Payton focused on this, and I think he's got a point here. If you're going to be successful, it has to start by doing well in your division. This game, along with the Chargers next week, who will come in banged up, offers a really nice opportunity to get a leg up in this division they haven't had in a long time. And then, oh, by the way, if you win on Sunday, you snap that for Las Vegas streak. The Broncos literally have not beaten the Raiders since they moved to the Mojave Desert.
Yeah, they were the team that beat the Oakland Raiders for the final time, and then the Las Vegas Raiders have defeated the Denver Broncos every single time. Let's hear from Sean Payton. How about that, right? We've got Sean Payton on the importance of beating the Raiders, Mace. This was something I like to hear this week, right?
I think so. The other thing about Las Vegas, being 0 for Las Vegas, it's not like the Raiders have been great since they went to Las Vegas. One playoff appearance that they snuck in that chaotic 2021 season when they parted ways with John Gruden and rode interim coach Rich Bisaccia, who probably should have gotten the full-time job.
Yeah.
Antonio Pierce is the head coach of the Raiders today, in part because Mark Davis thought, I don't want to make the same mistake again. We'll get into it later. I think that was a right. I think this was a classic right idea, wrong guy move, as we're seeing so far this season. But yeah, Sean Payton talked about that, talked about the importance of divisional play. Here's what the coach had to say.
Fair question. Look, it's a division opponent. This is our first chance to play a division opponent. Last year, we finished 3-3 in the division. I can't recall a team that has accomplished anything worthwhile, finishing 500 in your division. And then you take a team like Las Vegas. There's a long storied history, and certainly I appreciate that, especially with our fans. And so, it's our job to play our best football this Sunday, and get ready to play.
Get them ready to play, Mace.
Yeah.
This is Raiders week.
Get them ready to play against a team that's banged up. And it's wild to say this about the Broncos, considering that they're on a streak of 7 consecutive losing seasons. But you do have to remind the team that anything can happen. I mean, you've got Davante Adams, who didn't practice throughout the week. Max Crosby didn't practice throughout the week. A Raiders team that they're 2-2. They beat Cleveland last week, but you can also say that Cleveland is one of the few teams that is in more of a chaotic state than the Las Vegas Raiders right now. This was the team that, they played Carolina in their home opener, and they absorbed a beatdown to a team that looked like it was headed nowhere, although Carolina did change quarterbacks, going from Bryce Young to Andy Dalton right before that game. So if you're the Broncos, you have to be careful. Don't find yourselves on the receiving end of the kind of ambush that you delivered Tampa Bay when it was least expecting it back in week 3 to start that 2-game road swing that got the Broncos back on their feet.
Yeah, and they'd love nothing more than to stop your win streak because they're still the Raiders and they still hate you. It doesn't matter who's playing. There's also another distraction we probably will not get into for radio purposes, but like the Antonio Pierce stuff that's coming out from Arizona State, like, okay, this is also something hanging over this team. So the coach is providing distractions, not just Davante Adams.
The funny thing is, Cecil, I believe you and I talked about the state of things at ASU that led to NCAA investigation, and Pierce, of course, working on the staff under Herm Edwards, who was less of a coach and more of a CEO type.
Correct.
And it was sort of the remarkable thing that Antonio Pierce had come to the Raiders out of basically escaping a burning boat in Sun Devil football at that moment. And the team got hot under his watch, and he finds himself a head coach. The way ASU football was going when he was on the staff, this is not something anybody could have foreseen. But yes, some of the other stuff that's floating around here, I mean,
it's not great, Bob.
No. And this is also something that's interesting. The Las Vegas Raiders, going back to when everything went down with John Gruden in 2021, man, it's just been one wild, chaotic situation after another out there. And I'm not saying they would have won the Super Bowl if things had been functional, Cease, but they had that playoff appearance when Bisaccia was their interim head coach in 2021. It's fair to say that if they were actually functional on a regular basis, they might have gone back to the playoffs. Who knows? Derek Carr might still be their quarterback, which means if Carr were their quarterback, I don't think you'd have Davante Adams saying that he wanted out.
Right. Yeah.
They've wasted some talent in Vegas.
It'd be a huge situation, but advantage Broncos now, because if we look at the AFC West, it's the Chiefs who have their own concerns. And then it's the Broncos who could be right there, depending on the Chargers. That's going to be a tough matchup. But in this one, Mace, based on the fact that the Raiders are so bad against the run, they're so bad against the pass, the question on everyone's mind is, what are we going to see from Bo Nix? We're going to get to the outstanding defense. That's coming up on tonight's show. But, like, it's Bo Nix, and it's the, 60 yards last week. Can you double that? Can you triple that? Like, what's the number? What's the outcome? I feel like this could look like a Buccaneers type of game for Bo Nix. Where do you come down on Nix this week?
A Buccaneers type of game would be good. For kind of the morale's sake and also confidence in the red zone, I'd like to see him get another touchdown pass. He had the first touchdown pass of his career, of course, last Sunday. It wasn't perfect, but it got the job done. Very nice adjustment to the ball by Courtland Sutton there. But, of course, you also had the conditions, which everyone who's talked about them this week has acknowledged that they played a factor in that game. Conditions that are not going to be in evidence at Empower Field at Mile High on Sunday. Looking at a beautiful, sunny, warm day, warmer than you might expect for October in Colorado, at least than you might have expected over previous decades. I think it's sort of what you expect now. There's an opportunity here. The question, though, Cease, and you and I have talked about this a bit, but I want to circle back to this, is the wiser play pass to set up the run like you did in Tampa, or a more traditional run to set up the pass, especially going up against the Raider run defense that has been great. Now, I will say the per carry average against the Raiders this year, 6.5 in the opener against the Chargers, 5.6, 4.2, 4.2. So they have stopped the bleeding a bit, but they're also banged up. And if you're the Broncos, your running game comes into this contest with real momentum after the best dual game of Jaleel McLaughlin and Javonte Williams last week against the Jets. That's how you want it to work. Maybe not early in the game, but the last 3 quarters, you were forced to use only the 2 of them because of Tyler Baday's injury. The way it worked for those 2 backs playing off each other, that's how the Broncos were hoping it was going to be all along with Jaleel and Javonte.
Yeah, and I'm not going to talk about confidence with Bo Nix. Certainly, Sean Payton doesn't want any confidence about Bo Nix questions, but I will talk about the confidence of Javonte. Don't you want to get him going? Don't you want to build on that momentum? Don't you want to keep this up? Because the best friend of a young quarterback, I'm quoting Sean Payton, literally quoting Sean Payton, the best friend of a young quarterback is the run game. Well, yeah, run the ball, run to set up the pass this week. So it's Tampa vibes, but you get there a different way.
Run the ball and good defense. You're halfway there. Hopefully you're not living on a prayer. Yes.
That's right. Yeah.
You're halfway there to getting this equation right. Because the defense, now that the defense won't have some shaky days in the future, every defense, even great ones, has an off day.
Sure.
But you're seeing a unit on which you can rely. Despite losing Alex Singleton, a top shelf performance last week, Justin Sternad stepping in an inside linebacker. They immediately called his number on the blitz on the first play, and I love that call to get him involved. It was the defensive equipment, the defensive equivalent, of the ambush with which the Broncos open on offense against Tampa Bay.
Yep.
The operation looked smooth, even though you took Singleton out. That was real surprise. You and I talked about this. We were concerned about the run defense without Singleton going in there with Cody Barton and Justin Sternad. Barton is more of a plus player in coverage. Sternad also more of a plus player in coverage, but no problems, no worries for the Broncos last week. And this week will present some different challenges even without Davante Adams, because even though he hasn't had a touchdown yet, Brock Bowers is starting to put it together. Brock Bowers is averaging over 50 yards a game. He's off to a pretty solid start. Last 2 games, he's got 156 yards on 15 catches. Gardner Minshew is starting to find him, rely upon him. So we talked about Sternad and Barton in coverage. Handling Brock Bowers, who, if depending on the trajectory of Bowers and Bo Nix over the years, that's a choice we might come back to in discussing the 2024 draft. But handling Brock Bowers, I think, is going to be key, because he's starting to show those signs of his breakout moment coming very soon. And we do know, historically, Vance Joseph's defenses have had trouble against tight ends. This is a matchup we haven't really talked about before now, but it is one that I think you got to keep an eye on Sunday.
Yeah, and even the tight ends that aren't, household names, Cade Otton got you a little bit. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, the tight ends you're not normally used to got him. It's one of the reasons why I asked Vance Joseph on Thursday about, hey, we used to see Aqib Talib on Gronk. Does Pat Surtain have to be on the number one receiver? Does he have to be on the number one weapon? VJ didn't really answer me, Mace. I knew he wouldn't, but I at least wanted that statement on the record because, it's about matchups. It's about a weekly thing. Well, this week, I wouldn't be shocked if it's Pat Surtain on Brock Bowers. That makes the most sense, more than Jacoby Myers or Trey Tucker, who can take the top off the defense. Don't fall asleep against that guy. But I think it's Aqib Talib. It's Pat Surtain on Brock Bowers this week.
Well, you mentioned Aqib Talib because 11 years ago, a memorable game that the Saints and Patriots played in Foxborough, that was famously Bill Belichick putting Aqib Talib on Jimmy Graham.
Yep.
And shutting him down. It was a gambit that I think even from Belichick, not everybody was expecting going into that game, but it took Jimmy Graham out of the game. And this is when he was peak Jimmy Graham.
Yes.
This was at that moment, he was step for step with Rob Gronkowski as the most dangerous receiving threat in the NFL at the tight end position. And Aqib Talib took him out of that game. So it's the sort of tactical creativity that I would like to see from VJ potentially in this. I do think maybe you start with the inside linebackers. Maybe that's the first look you show. But over time in the game, maybe that's where you talk about Surtain traveling with Brock Bowers, especially when he splits out. Now, if he's going to go closer to the offensive line, closer to being in line, maybe you show a look of the inside linebackers on him. But the how they defend him is fascinating because as I've dived into the Raiders this week, the breakthrough is coming for him. You can see it, and it's easy to kick the Raiders right now while they're down and while things are chaotic. But there are some good things happening there long term with their players, and it starts with Brock Bowers, who, I hate to say this, is probably going to be a problem for the Broncos for many years to come.
Yes. Yeah. He's a weapon. Don't think of him as traditional tight end because he can beat you as a receiver, even if you bracket him. He's that type of guy. So
yeah,
that'll be a concern. I'd say if he was in line, almost play it like old basketball, Mace. Like if we're on the hoop court, right? You were a hooper back in the day. And
when I was a kid.
It's a little bit of you hand it off. So if he's in line, lined up next to the tackle, Cody, it's you. And then if he's in the slot or if he's out wide, then Pat, it's you. So it's like kind of a little bit of a zone type of thing. And you just hand off responsibilities based on their formation. But no doubt with Zamir White banged up and ineffective, Antonio Pierce has talked about using Alexander Madison a little bit more. He's been productive, but how much more could be left in the tank with Madison? So, and Jacoby Myers is a fine receiver. There's no doubt. And Gardner Minshew has his own, I got my own problems, to quote Lando Calrissian. But it's not like they're without talent. They're without their top talent, Davante Adams, but they've got talent to be sure.
They're without their top talent. And then at quarterback with Gardner Minshew, you've got somebody who can keep you alive. And it's funny, the Raiders being 2-2 and Gardner Minshew basically being that guy who's right on the edge between starter and backup. He's a bottom third starter, but if you considered him a backup, you'd say, okay, probably the best backup in football. And he kind of proved that last year with Indianapolis, coming in for Anthony Richardson and guiding that team to within one game of the playoffs. If they win at home in week 18, that's a win in their in situation. Of course, that game also showed maybe the ceiling on Gardner Minshew compared with, on the other side, CJ Stroud. I mean, that was a classic game where one guy made the plays to win it and the other didn't. There's a reason why CJ Stroud is a top tier quarterback, one of the best young passers in the game today. And Gardner Minshew is that guy who is kind of on the fringe. And really, if the Raiders had things go their way this offseason, Minshew would have been keeping the seat warm for Michael Penix Jr.
Yes.
But then the Falcons threw everyone a curveball and took Penix right there. And Penix sitting on the bench behind Kirk Cousins, who had 500 plus yards. And if you saw that hug that Raheem Morris gave Kirk Cousins after the game-winning touchdown pass on Thursday night, it was there were so many things communicated in that moment.
Yep.
And I think the big thing that was communicated in that moment was Raheem reminding him, "You're my guy.
You're the guy.
And you're my guy. And this is why you're my guy, because I brought you in to run the Shanahan-McVay offense as expertly as you have. And now the Falcons are sitting there with a bunch of big wins already on their legs. You're at 3-2. By the way, the Broncos see them next month. It's pretty dangerous. I actually had a tear in my eye because it was a really cool moment. If you saw, part of me, the part of me that was a Bucs fan was a little angry, but you see that it gets to you, man. Also, I liked Raheem Morris when he was coaching the Bucs. Thought was a guy it was probably too soon for him to be a head coach.
He was a little young back then.
Yeah. He was, but we saw it when he was Atlanta's interim coach in 2020, really kind of getting things back to respectability. I personally thought they should have hired him right then, but it was one of the best things that happened to him was to not get the job then and go work with Sean McVay again. He'd work with Sean McVay on the Mike Shanahan staff. That's another thing. Raheem Morris, after he got fired by Tampa Bay, was on that Mike Shanahan Washington staff that everybody talks about. Mm-hmm. And you're going to see the Falcons next month. And I think when they come with, we're taking it one game at a time. The Broncos are taking it one game at a time. But the Falcons look like they're going to be a problem.
They are going to be a problem. Gardner Minshew. Let's hear from Jonathan Cooper real quick before we get done with this segment. But Jonathan Cooper talked about Gardner Minshew, one of our favorite guys to talk in the locker room. Here's what Coop said about the Raiders quarterback.
He's a confident dude. He sits back there. He knows how to diamond up. He might not get out of the pocket sometimes, but he can be crafty with the ball. And, whenever you handle somebody like that, you just got to make them uncomfortable. And that's what we're going to do.
You know what Gardner Minshew is, Mason? Maybe I got pickup basketball on the mind. He's that guy at the park that'll get hot. He'll either be cold as ice or he'll be just sizzling hot. There really is no middle ground with Gardner Minshew. So if he's uncomfortable, he's going to be cold. But just like a shooter on the basketball court, you don't want that guy to get streaky. And I think Gardner Minshew is real streaky. He can be hot. He can be cold. You got to watch out.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And you look at him last year when he was guiding the Colts. I'll just throw some numbers from his last 7 starts at you that stand as evidence. Okay. 66.2, 100.5, 81.1, 123.4, 58.5, 111.5, 71.7. So you see it's back and forth. Those are his passer ratings. So he's having bad game, excellent game, triple-digit passer rating. Bad game, excellent game. Bad game, excellent game. Unfortunately for the Colts last year, and probably for him too, a bad game there at the end. And I say for him as well, because if the Colts do beat the Texans and go to the postseason, Gardner Minshew's contract is probably more than a bit bigger than it was. But again, like I say, he's that back, he'd be a top level backup. He's a lower third starter. And the Raiders are 2-2. Despite everything, they're 2-2. He hasn't been brilliant yet, but he's not been a reason why they've struggled either. He's doing his job, but what is missing so far this year is he's had a couple of games that were okay. And then a couple that weren't so great. He hasn't had that hot game. Now, I don't think it's going to come Sunday against this Broncos defense, but if you were at the game against Jacksonville back in 2019, you know how he can move around and buy time and work beyond structure. And that is one thing the Broncos, I think, are concerned about as they go into game planning this week.
Yep, make him uncomfortable. We're quite comfortable here on Denver Sports Tonight. Also a special edition of Orange and Blue Today. Or is it a special edition of Denver Sports Tonight? Either way, we're here at Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason, and people want to know, to help out Bo Nix, Sean Payton going to get a little help from the tight ends this week? Let's talk about it coming up next. All right. That's one. Here's two. Welcome back. It is Denver Sports Tonight. Also a special edition of Orange and Blue Today. Cecil Lammey, Andrew Mason. If you haven't checked us out on YouTube, please do that. We have a 7-day-a-week show talking about the Broncos, and we bring you that information. The information I think a lot of fans want to know, Mace, is can Greg Dulcich do something? Can the tight ends do something? You know, we're getting Donald Parham requests. Lucas Kroll, who almost had a jersey against the Jets, but that doesn't count because he didn't get a jersey. So it's like, okay, is there something with the tight ends that can further help out the rookie quarterback in Bo Nix this week against the Raiders?
I hope so, but through 4 games, the tight end position, as a collective, 47 yards on 8 receptions.
Yeah, and before that Thursday night game, Kyle Pitts had 8 receptions for 105 yards and a touchdown. And that's seen as a down year. So collectively, the tight ends, 8 for 47. It's not great.
Their yardage per game as a group is less than Brock Bowers' yard, or their yardage over the season, 47 yards as a group. It's less than Brock Bowers' average per game so far this year. So chew on that for a moment. And the Broncos needed to get a quarterback. They needed to get Bo Nix. They love Bo Nix. There was no question they were going to take him. I do recall before the draft, you and I having a lot of discussions about Brock Bowers and how he might help this team. But you had to go QB. But the thing is, the Broncos did not address tight end in free agency. It was, okay, let's see who we've got and if we can get them better. Greg Dulcich hasn't launched so far this year. Lucas Kroll, who was a terrific player in OTAs, maybe not the best player on the team, but a terrific player.
Thank you.
No doubt he was making plays out there. He hasn't gotten a jersey yet, but if Greg Dulcich can't ramp up his production, and by the way, remember we talked about that block that he had on the Bo Nix scramble against Tampa? Yes. Like, hey, you're getting it? Watch the film of him blocking against the Jets, and you'll be like, oh, man, not good. Yeah, like I think that moment was probably an aberration, unfortunately, for number 80. And so at what point do you just say, okay, let's turn the pace and like you said, getting requests about Donald Parham on the practice squad, or go back to Lucas Kroll, who did show some flashes down the stretch last year as he got more reps. That's something I think the Broncos have to ask themselves and maybe asking themselves right now.
Yeah, Joe Lombardi talked about Dulcich at his press conference on Thursday. One of the few questions allowed for Joe this week. But let's hear from the coach. It's a longer answer, but it's well worth your time because there's a lot of stuff here on Dulcich. Here's Joe Lombardi talking about his tight end.
Yeah, I think you're always, as you're going through the game plan and you design the plays you're going to work, there's people that you anticipate will be first in the progression. And then, you might get a different coverage. You might get a different, pass rush gets to you before the play can express itself. So, all the guys have plays that are for them, so to speak. When you install it, they see that they're first in the progression, and for whatever reason it hadn't worked out. But just like we talked about in the run game, you go through the process and keep trying to get your best players the ball. So I don't think there's anything specific. It's just, keep working and, look at the big picture. Don't get caught up in the short term.
Okay. Well, if there's plays called for Dulcich, why isn't he getting open then? Because if he's the first read, you and I have said it a lot. Bo Nix will find the open guy.
Yes.
Okay, Greg, get open.
He's got to get separation, and when the ball hits his hands, he's got to catch it. He had those 2 drops against Pittsburgh back in week 2. The Broncos have 83 total catches this year. Greg Dulcich is responsible for 5 of them. They've got 6 total drops. Greg Dulcich is responsible for 2 of them. So 1 drop every 3.5 catchable passes is not going to get it done. Like you'd say, not great, Bob.
Yeah.
So Bo Nix will throw to the open guy, but you do wonder if those 2 drops sort of are in the back of everybody's mind. Now, Courtland Sutton's had a couple of drops too, but he's had some explosive plays. So you've seen the positive from him. You haven't seen the positive from Greg Dulcich yet this year. And I think he's running out of time to show what he can do, because you do have Kroll. And again, it's not like we're talking about Kroll middle of last year when he hadn't played.
Right.
He showed some flashes last year. He had 8 catches, 95 yards in the last 5 games of the season when he started playing a little bit more regularly. He's a brilliant pass breakup away from a long touchdown against the Raiders there in week 18 last year. If Dulcich can't do it, I think you've got to I think you've got to give Kroll or Parham an audition as that joker in space tight end.
Yeah, and we said it, during the offseason before training camp, Mace. And if you've not watched Orange and Blue Today yet on YouTube, please do that. We have a 7-day-a-week show on YouTube. Just search Orange and Blue Today or search Denver Sports. Make sure to subscribe to our channel. We appreciate you. But I remember our conversations like, is Dulcich in trouble of making the roster? And now here's your starting tight end, he's your lead tight end, and he's just not producing. So again, like it's a results-based business. You got to get it done.
And the thing is, because he's not a plus blocker, it's not like he can lean on other things, right? I mean, Adam Troutman has 1 catch through 4 games, but you're not expecting that from him. You're expecting him to block and be effective there. And he has been. And that's why Adam Troutman sits atop the depth chart. You'd like a bit more from him in terms of the passing game, certainly, but his job is different than Greg Dulcich's. It simply is.
Yep.
And because I posted Adam Troutman talking about the uniforms they're wearing this weekend, and some guy on Twitter is like, he needs to be productive, needs to actually do something. Well, he is doing something. Yeah, he's doing dirty work. We talked about the running game at the start of the show. He's one of the guys that's making it better.
Mm-hmm. You know who Adam Troutman is? He's like us, man. He's got the lunch pail out, right? We're doing a 7-day-a-week Broncos show. Adam Troutman's doing 7-day-a-week Broncos work, right? Getting in there with that hard hat. It is Denver Sports Tonight. Also a special edition of Orange and Blue Today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason talking Broncos, but something so very special. I'm getting chills right now. So very special coming up on Sunday. We're talking about the throwbacks. We're going to get into some love from the players, from ourselves, about these throwback jerseys, and we'll do that coming up next. All right. Feeling good. And here we go.
Do I need to get my belt buckle? Do you have your belt buckle?
Somewhere.
All right.
It's in my backpack. I have it right here.
Hang on. All right. Let me go reach and get mine too.
There is my belt buckle for everyone waiting on YouTube for Mace to get his belt buckle. So there you go.
Okay. Hang on.
All right.
I had to get. We got our belt buckles. I know. Well, this is the video part of it, right?
Yes.
I had my. It was I had to go get mine because I took a picture of
And-
it last night for my story.
And hi to everyone in the video because I ain't cutting any of this out. So that's fine. That's fine. Yeah, people like that a little extra behind the scenes on YouTube. Speaking of behind the scenes, let's give them like 7-ish minutes, and then I got to scoot because I'm
let's
on
go.
it under
Let's
an
go.
hour.
Let's
All
go.
right. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Denver sports tonight. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason throwbacks, dude, to 1977. The throwback jerseys. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see our throwback Broncos belt buckles. This is amazing. These jerseys are amazing. We've got plenty of comments from the players, Mace. Nothing but love for this look.
Nothing but love. And I got to tell you, Cease, we haven't seen the full look on everybody just yet. But on Thursday, when the Broncos practiced, they took the Guardian caps that they'd had on Wednesday off, and you saw those legacy blue helmets shining in the sun. It just felt right. Like, few of us watching practice looked at each other like, this is how it's got to be, man. This is great.
Yeah. Now look at your face, man. You're just all smiling about it. That's because
Mm-hmm.
you love a good looking jersey. And
Yeah.
dare I say, this is amongst the best regular jersey, throwback jerseys, whatever. This is among the best in NFL history.
It is. And the interesting thing to me is that the players, many of whom were not alive when the Broncos last wore these regularly, they're really digging it, these guys. Even though they didn't live the history of this team, they're seeing it and they're like, wow, like they're pumped. Listen to what Adam Troutman had to say about the uniforms when we talked about them with him on Wednesday.
Yeah, everyone's excited. I'm sure you guys are. I'm sure the fans are. Maybe it'll become the primary at some point. Who knows? That'd be nice. But yeah, I'm excited to wear them. I mean, that we're already wearing the helmets. Obviously, we have the Guardian caps on right now, but they look awesome. So I'm very excited.
The way you said that, like, be nice. You have a preference then for the throwbacks, perhaps?
I think everyone would say yes, probably. I mean, the new jerseys that we have, I love. They actually looked really great. But yeah, I mean, everyone loves their throwback jersey. Like, that's not a question. Like, Atlanta up there right now, they got their red helmets on. I'm sure they'd like to wear that every game too. So.
Yeah, look at his face when you asked him about that. It's like everyone would say they have a preference. I'm pretty sure. Like
Yes.
he knows, players know, they love this jersey, man.
They love this jersey. They love that logo. They love that logo that if you're among the first 25,000 fans,
Yes.
you'll get that belt buckle that you have. I've got an extensive article on a lot of things going on Sunday over at denversports.com that you can check out. It was very interesting. I asked Haley Sullivan, the Broncos chief marketing officer, why a belt buckle as the commemorative item, because they brainstormed some different ideas. One of the things that they settled on with the belt buckle, number one, of course, it's very Western, fits the Denver Broncos general motif, fits Colorado very well.
Right.
But number two, the belt buckle was one of the top Christmas wish list items in 1977.
Okay. There you
Very
go.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe this will bring belt buckles back. Who knows?
Maybe you'll be wearing a belt buckle. Everybody will be wearing a Broncos belt buckle. But as you said, the first 25,000 people will get one of these commemorative belt buckles. So head on out there, man. Get out there, drive safe, but be there. And check out your article at denversports.com.
Be there early. Couple of reasons. Number one, if you want to watch Riley Odoms and Steve Foley go into the Ring of Fame, that's happening quite early. That's going to be at 11:30 in the morning. But also, it's not a 2:25 kickoff. It's a 2:05 kickoff. And I think that throws a lot of people off when you have the 05 start time rather than the 25 start time. So if you want that belt buckle, you got to get there early. But bear in mind, you might have to leave a little earlier than you normally would anyway because of the 2:05 kickoff. That's something like, and I have noticed that when you have those 05 kickoffs, there are a few more empty seats at the start than you might see for other games. So make sure you get there. There's a lot of stuff going on. The field's going to look mostly like it did for the 1977 AFC Championship game. They're redoing a lot of the stuff on the scoreboard. They're going to use some dot matrix elements on the scoreboard to throw it back. They're going to they've got they're gonna what I was told is the music is 70s inspired, so it's not all gonna be 70s music.
Okay, 70s
so that
inspired. Okay,
they've given them they've used the word inspired to talk about a lot of this, which gives them a little greater latitude with it than just to say, like, if they box themselves in and said we're going to do this just like in 1977, well, then you got to be careful to make sure you get everything right. Think of it like when you see a movie and it says inspired by a true story, inspired by true events. That gives you some flexibility and leeway, and the Broncos have a little bit of that. But yeah, it's going to be fun. You hope that the game itself lives up to everything that's going on with Foley and Odom's going in the Ring of Fame, Randy Gradishar being celebrated. He'll get his Hall of Fame ring, I believe, at this game. The 1977 team being honored at this game for Alumni Weekend. I've also got a feeling that we may see the throwback uniform be what they wear on Alumni Weekend for the foreseeable future. That this may become a tradition.
Yeah, it may become a tradition, and it's certainly already a fan favorite. Just the first day of training camp, when the first day they sold the throwbacks, we saw a lot more than I thought we would see, because the New Jerseys are not cheap anymore. Even just the iron-on ones, like a lot of people bought those. I'll imagine that at this game, a lot more people will buy them. Just get a win, get a nice win, so we have a nice memory of this day, because this is really cool.
This is really cool. It's important to win for a lot of reasons, and I think it's important to win. I think to sort of get the mojo right when they go back to this. It's the first time they've worn this type of uniform since 2001, Thanksgiving Day against Dallas. I think you want to get this thing off on the right foot, because this is a permanent, or this is a part of the Broncos uniform ensemble that's going to be here for the next few years. So you don't want to have a bad game and everyone gets superstitious and decides to throw those things back in the closet. I think you want to keep seeing them over and over. The players think they're fire, and I think they're fire too. So I'm looking forward to it.
He's Andrew Mason. I am Cecil Lammey. You hear that sweet Ronnie James Dio music? You know that means we're out of here for tonight on Denver Sports Tonight. Also a special edition of Orange and Blue today. And radio-wise, this doesn't make sense, so watch us on YouTube, and it will, because if you want to help us out the most online, Mace, on YouTube, how do people do that?
Like,
comment,
share,
subscribe,
hit that notification bell,
so that you never miss a vid. That's right. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I'm at Cecil Lammey saying OBT's a BFD. Thanks to Dante, the man of the box. I'm Cecil Lammey saying stay tuned, and would you please stay frosty.